Welcome on in, everybody. Alex, Kirry, Lloyd, Cole. We're here live at the KSL Sports Zone. Of course, the news trickling out across the entire world of college football and the head coaching carousel that is very interesting all the time is that Kyle Whittingham, former legendary Utah coach after stepping down a couple of weeks ago, and Morgan Scalley taking that job officially. The Michigan job looks to be his. And we are all over this thing because obviously it's not just going to impact the Utah coaching staff. It'll also impact likely the BYU coaching staff if Jay Hill leaves as the defensive coordinator from BYU and heads to Michigan as well. The possibility is there. All of these things are just reports, so who knows what's going to happen. However, it looks to be pretty close to a done deal. Joining us on the program right now, he covers the University of Michigan for the Detroit Free Press. Tony Garcia joining us on the program. Tony, thanks for joining us on short notice today, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Initial thoughts. I think generally people seem very, very high on this pick of Kyle Whittingham coming to Ann Arbor. What have the last couple of weeks been like covering this team? And frankly, it's a little bit of the same of what's been over the past couple of years, which has been some off the field, not a lot of off the field stuff that's gotten in the way of the football side of things. What about the rumors with Coach Whittingham, and how's that affected the Michigan fan base?
Yeah, I was going to say last couple of weeks. I was going to say it feels like longer than that.
Yes.
But but certainly the last couple of weeks have been unlike anything we've seen in Ann Arbor, even given everything that's gone on. But yeah, I mean, things moved pretty quickly the last 24 hours. It sounds like with Kyle Whittingham. I was told, I think it was a little more than a week ago that there was there was interest on Whittingham's side. Members of his camp had reached out to Ann Arbor, but they were still sort of circling back with Kalen DeBoer and Kenny Dillingham, and then DeBoer in Alabama beat Oklahoma, so that messed up that timeline. It sounds like they never got a firm offer into Dillingham. And so, I mean, Jed Fish was floated around, Jeff Brown was floated around, but personally, I think Kyle Whittingham is a great hire, and it's not just because I'm speaking on a Utah sports station. I mean, you know what he's about. I wrote earlier today for the Detroit Free Press. Michigan needed stability, and outside of him being 66, and so you don't know how long the runway is. He's as steady Eddie as it seems to get in the sport, and then you bring someone like that who's been able to prove to win in multiple leagues and be the winningest coach in Utah history, and really elevate that program. And you give him the financial backing and the brand and the resources of a Michigan, you can easily see the appeal. Not to mention, stylistically, he's similar to what Michigan wants to do. You want to run the ball, you want to play sound defense, you want to build through the trenches, and then you supplement it all with decent quarterback play. And do all that at Michigan, and you're off to a really good start.
As you look at how this thing went down and how these coaching searches go down is one thing, but the idea that you have to not just hire a brand new head coach, you also have to start repairing that image. How much of that do you think goes into a decision like this to bring a guy like Coach Whittingham, who we've covered for decades here in this market, and the guy is as squeaky clean as it gets? That's almost half of the hire, it feels like, is that you can get a guy who's in there who could solidify the program just based off of the culture that he builds wherever he goes.
Yeah, I think this time for Michigan, that was paramount. It was of the utmost importance, given, Jim Harbaugh won big, but it wasn't without some NCAA investigations and just headlines following him around. Mm-hmm. Sherrone Moore was not winning at the same level, and then he had one of the most historic fallouts that, frankly, we've ever seen a coach have at this level. And so Michigan was, Biff Poggi, the interim coach, spoke about it earlier this week. Wow, that was only earlier this week, Monday. It's been a long week. He was talking about how Michigan's essentially been like a malfunctioning organization for the better part of half a decade, almost a decade. And athletic director Ward Manuel just wants it to stop. Now he is there's an investigation in his athletic department about who's known what and when, what the culture is like. That's expected to come out in the next month or so. So Michigan really did not want to hire anybody that had any red flags of any sort. Like, I was told that Jed Fish, when they were running his background, there was a red flag of sorts that came up, and he's a guy who had some Michigan ties, having been a passing game coordinator under Jim Harbaugh in his early days. That kind of quickly ruled him out. And I think it is a very good decision to go to someone who is proven somewhere else, but does not have any ties to Michigan or anything that's been going on in the recent years.
So does Michigan, will they look to just completely clean up shop and just have Whittingham start fresh, or do you see them keeping, because obviously recruiting to Michigan is a little different than what Kyle Whittingham has been recruiting to Utah. So does Kyle Whittingham just completely hire his own staff, or do you see there's some guys on that coaching staff that maybe are retained?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, well, first and foremost, that's going to be up to Kyle, right? It's about who he wants around him. However, I think it's going to be a largely cleaned out house. I think there's going to be a lot of new faces in Ann Arbor this next year. I would wager that if someone is kept, and I'm pretty sure this is what will happen, Tony Alford of the running backs coach, who was previously at Ohio State, he's done a remarkable job there, done an equally good job in Ann Arbor. I think he would be probably number one with a bullet among the coaches to keep on this staff. And then anyone else on the offensive side, I mean, Michigan already lost its offensive coordinator to Missouri, Chip Lindsey, and obviously there's rumors and sounds like Michigan is moving towards Jason Beck, the offensive coordinator at Utah, to come join him on staff here. So that would sort of help with that. I don't know if anyone else on offense would stay. I think defense would largely be cleaned out as well. Obviously, they're targeting BYU's defensive coordinator, Jay Hill. This is all very early on, so you don't know how it'll shake out. If there was one defensive coach, maybe Lou Esposito, the defensive line coach. He's done a very good job with that line, and his son is committed to the program. Not that that's a reason to keep a coach around for one commit, but if there was someone on the defensive side, I think Lou would probably be my number one candidate.
Do you think that a lot of the staff has to be put together before an official announcement comes? I would think that Michigan wants to gets this thing announced as soon as they can to get on the track of people looking like they're making some moves to clean up some stuff.
Yeah, no, the staff certainly does not need to be put together in order to make that announcement. I was hearing it could come as early as today, like sometime in the next hour. It feels like now we're getting closer and closer to the end of that. But Michigan is pretty notorious for the 5 o'clock news dump on Friday. And we are 45 minutes. I'm sure you guys know how that drill goes. Yeah. So we are T-minus 45 away from that. Normally it's about 4:50 when that happens. So I'll be on my phone at that time. It could come late tonight. I mean, Michigan's traveling down to Orlando today, the team. And so they're flying to Orlando for their Citrus Bowl. There are just a ton of moving parts. I'm hearing that Kyle Whittingham is going to join them on this trip. Sounds like he might need to fly out to Vegas first and say some things to his team that he just left and was maybe going to coach as the interim, and then he's headed down to Orlando. That's what I'm hearing. That's not official, but no, the staff does not need to be together in order to make this hire official.
That's pretty wild. We're keeping an eye on it, of course, on our end here in Utah. And Tony Garcia, Detroit Free Press, he covers the University of Michigan football and basketball, and exciting times. And breaking news never sleeps, even during the holidays, Tony. So we appreciate you jumping on here and hanging out with us, and enjoy it. And we'll probably dip back in again at some point after everything becomes official over the next couple of weeks here. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Thanks for having me, guys.
There you go, Tony Garcia. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned that line on Kyle.
He's going to probably fly out to Vegas first to say goodbye to the team. It's like,
yeah,
I don't think so.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I think he can send a text.
Can you imagine Kyle being hired by Michigan and
going out to?
Game?
I mean, look, I don't want to speak for him. I'm not going to pretend like I don't know what his feelings are about the whole thing.
No, I'm sure he would love to.
But especially if he has to. I mean, if
you don't think Kyle Whittingham would love to be there, coach? I'm sure he would. Absolutely.
I love this. Getting the other side, just a couple little extra things when Tony Garcia just tells us, yeah, it sounds like I've heard that Kyle Whittingham is going to make that trip down to Orlando with the Michigan team, or to meet up with the team down in Michigan.
Anybody else in Orlando?
Hans Olsen.
Who else? Anybody else? Another team?
All of BYU and all of.
Well, isn't that nice? Is there anybody that he's looking to take from that staff?
I think Brent Key's got some guys that he's really honing in on that Georgia Tech team.
Anybody else on that staff that he might be? I don't know, wanting to talk to. Not that he couldn't.
Listen, that's why the trip. That's why the trip to Orlando makes a lot of sense. Yeah, say hi to the team that you may be the head coach of. Also, I don't know, make a little meetup happen. I'll meet you at Harry Potter World.
Well, if you do that, you will run into Hans Olsen.
Oh yeah, I'll be at the. Hey, I'll be in the Slytherin house. Okay, just say the password and we'll chat. Jay Hill, come on. Things are wild, man. It's getting even more crazy. So that even just those little tidbits, pretty fascinating to see. And yeah, you have to wonder if the moving parts of the Bryce Underwood thing's interesting, but it's not. I mean, these players, it doesn't matter. Like, Devin Dampier could easily leave the University of Utah and go over to Michigan. He could easily leave and go to ASU because we've heard that. His high school coach is down there. I'm sure Kenny Dillingham would love to be the disruptor of that situation and get him out of Utah. But all the moving parts that go along with this. And, yeah, on top of all of it, you've got a BYU-Georgia Tech bowl game tomorrow that's going to be affected immediately by it. There's no way that people are going to pretend like this thing is happening. Kalani, the amount of questions that he's going to wish he never has to hear during the bowl game. You know, I'm just here to talk about the bowl game. I mean, I already know what it sounds like.
Once he had this whole deal done after the Penn State thing, everything was
we
done.
Thought it too. We're out there.
We're clean. Unscathed. I got all my coaches. I got them more money. We got more NIL. Like, we're golden.
Yeah, and how things change. And I said it too. And I know for a fact that BYU fans felt amazing about getting Kalani long term, but part of that deal of getting Jay Hill paid and keeping him on was such a huge part of that. That was a huge part of a sigh of relief coming out of the BYU camp, out of BYU fans, out of their administrators. All of the headache that Brian Santiago had running up to that moment has returned today. I guarantee it. He is wringing those hands. I guarantee he's in Orlando. I guarantee they're trying to figure out how this thing is going down. If they're not sitting down and having serious discussions with Jay Hill right now, and I've had a few people reach out and go, I thought he couldn't move laterally. I thought that was part of his clause. He couldn't have a lateral move. He had to take a head coaching job. Money talks. And I'm not saying that Jay Hill will just throw everything away. What I will say is that Michigan will throw whatever they need to into the works so that they could make this thing happen for Kyle Whittingham. And Michigan fans have no idea. They don't know Kyle Whittingham from Adam. They know his name. Fine, great. They have no clue who Jay Hill is. And if he ends up being the defensive coordinator there, they're out to find out that they have a shot at a national championship by those two names alone. I'm still out. The jury's still out for me on a 1-year Jason Beck success that he had. I think it's awesome, and I know that Witt loves that style. That's why he's taking him. If he does, he loves that style. Run the ball 2.5 to 1 times of throwing it. Right. Keep that ball on the ground.
Yep.
Give me 240 yards on the ground every game. He wants to see it, and as ESPN is now reporting, it's expected to be a finalized deal today. And because they're on Eastern time there in Ann Arbor, I would assume
it's going to happen at 5.
I would assume in the next few minutes or in the next half hour to 45 minutes, we may hear something solidified there. But, Pete Thamel's on right now on ESPN talking about this whole thing. And obviously so many families are going to be affected by this, from
We've
the coaching
talked about
trees.
all day long. We've, from the ripple effect / dominoes that this will have across Utah and BYU. Like, it will be felt. I mean, BYU, granted, they were able to retain everybody, with after that Penn State thing, but that doesn't mean things change.
Yeah,
and it feels like, I mean, without Jay Hill, like that deep, I'll just say, if you don't have Jay Hill running that defense, they are not playing in the Big 12 championship game. I don't think so.
I don't either. Well, at least for the short term.
That's a different team. That doesn't mean somebody else can't step in, but that's how big of a deal Jay Hill is on that. The importance of Jay Hill for BYU.
The difficulty of this time of year that this becomes is the recruiting timeline. The transfer portal opens up on the 2nd, yes, you've got commits that are chatting with all these coaches at the right now, and they've committed to those coaches right now, and they may not be in place. We're hearing some potential details on this deal. Pete Thamel just said it was a possible 5-year deal for Kyle Whittingham. Any guesses on the money? I mean, we haven't seen it yet, but I bet they're going to have to be above the $10 million mark. That's the new watermark, I think, for coaches. I think they're going to have to be north of $10 million a year. And so I think you're going to see like a 5-year, 55-ish million type of a deal for Kyle Whittingham. If Pete Thamel is reporting true about a 5-year possible deal of Kyle Whittingham going to Michigan, as now ESPN's just, they're full on just diving head into this thing, and Kyle Whittingham going to Michigan seems like it's not just a done deal. It seems like the finalizing of it is going to happen probably within the next hour here. So we'll keep you up to date.
What a wild day after
Isn't
Christmas.
that? Yeah. Oh, listen. No, this will go down in the annals of remember that time?
Yep,
we were all at home.
is.
I was eating that stuff out of my stocking from the day before, and then Lloyd goes, "What are you doing the rest of today?" And I go, "I'm free. What's Kyle Whittingham doing?" Looks like he'll be heading to Michigan. That's the report, and now the possibility of a possible 5-year deal. We're hearing. If I'm going to guess, it's going to be north of $10 million a year for Kyle Whittingham. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. If you are Michigan and you want to be playing with the big boys, the type of money that draw people away. Lane Kiffin is getting about $13 million to go to LSU per year. Lincoln Riley 5 years ago was $10 million a year, and so I think the going rate just keeps going up and up and up. And you're going to see Michigan open up those pocketbooks, and they are willing. They aren't just paying for Kyle Whittingham; they're paying for a full PR overhaul of that program. And they'll get it with Kyle Whittingham if that ends up being the case. Let's take a quick break here, and we'll come back because I know we're anticipating Mitch Harper coming on with us, the BYU insider for KSLSports.com. They, of course, have the Pop-Tarts Bowl tomorrow in Orlando, so very appropriate that the trip that Michigan takes to Orlando down to the Citrus Bowl works out just fine if you're wanting to have a quick meeting with anybody on that BYU staff down there in Orlando if you are the brand new head coach of Michigan. But we'll see how that thing goes down. We'll ask Mitch what the fallout could look like with that, not just in this bowl game tomorrow, because I think it's going to be an absolute mess in terms of the amount of headspace that's going to be dedicated for these players as to what the future looks like. If Jay Hill leaves, the amount of people that you'd see leave that BYU program, not even just from a staff standpoint, but from a player standpoint, I think would be a lot. You don't think you'd see Jay Glasker in a Michigan navy blue and yellow wearing that number 16? I'm just throwing it out there. You're going to see a lot of people, at least, who are going to be looked at as that possibility as well. Satawala. Oh, man. He's a local guy, though. Annapolis, he's not going to go to Michigan. The thing is when Michigan comes calling, that's a pretty big deal. So we'll see how that thing goes. But we'll chat with Mitch Harper in just a few minutes here. We'll come back. We're also anticipating chatting with Josh Furlong. He's also one of our Ute insiders, KSL Sports, and we'll get his thoughts on this one too, get his angle on how to approach this thing. And hopefully in the next maybe less than an hour, we're anticipating possibly a news dump of Kyle Whittingham being officially named the head coach at the University of Michigan. We'll see if that happens. We'll take a break. We'll come back. More to go. Mitch Harper next with us, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
I'm afraid I'm in the transfer portal. So yeah, it's a different feel, but like I said, I'm at peace, and I did not want to be that guy that overstayed his welcome, and people just saying, hey, when's this guy going to leave? That was not my intention ever, and I hope I didn't do that. I'm sure with some people I did do that, but to me the timing is right. I don't know if it's ever out of your system. It's in your blood, and so I don't know about that. That being said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but it's when you got the coaching in your blood, it just doesn't go away.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Alex, Kirry, Lloyd, Cole, Alex Napolis coming in and hitting the buttons here live for us and, frankly, doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes producing for us to get you through what has become one of the biggest days in Utah sports history, not just the University of Utah sports history, but I think overall, Lloyd, we've been talking about how big of a deal this is, how far-reaching a possible deal like this is, and ESPN is reporting that the Kyle Whittingham to Michigan deal is almost totally done. We've even heard a 5-year term possibly on that contract. We don't know any other details. We don't have anything totally confirmed, but we just had Tony Garcia on from the Detroit Free Press, and he was like, yeah, it's not just like a close to done deal. It looks like he might end up in Orlando hanging out with the Michigan Wolverines for the Citrus Bowl. I don't know if you know this, but BYU is playing also in the city of Orlando in their bowl game tomorrow, the Pop-Tarts Bowl coming up. And, man, I can't think about how much of a big deal. These bowl games are already hard to tell these players to get excited about, Lloyd.
Did you see Pete Thamel's latest, the updated?
What's the update?
Well, did you put a number out there? Sorry.
I said 5 years possibly, and I said maybe 50-ish million, 55-ish million. Possibly, because I can't imagine him going for less than $10 million a year.
Probably 50
because
to 60.
that's like
I'm not seeing a number on it.
That's like the going rate, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was maybe a little more. Maybe it's 60. I mean, if it's
Thamel saying Kyle Whittingham has this is the update, has agreed to a 5-year deal to become Michigan's next head coach.
So, what those numbers will end up being, what that'll end up finalizing to look like, we're staying on top of it here because we anticipate as it's about 4:30 Eastern, just past 4:30 Eastern time. If it approaches that 5 o'clock time frame, the closer we get to that, I think the more likely we're going to get a news dump on a Friday after Christmas on this job. But Michigan, I'm sure, wants to get it announced as soon as possible.
I love this business.
Oh, it's fun. And these days are even more fun. And the overreaching part, the part that extends into a lot of these teams and a lot of the names out there, Jay Hill has been floated out there as the top name being pursued possibly for that defensive coordinator spot if Kyle Whittingham does indeed get that deal tied up officially today. Joining us on the program right now, he is our BYU insider for KSLSports.com. Mitch Harper, I would anticipate you've been watching this with a close eye and wondering the same thing we all have been wondering. What does that mean for this BYU team if Jay Hill does end up leaving the program from that defensive coordinator spot? Is that even a possibility? I've heard people say, no, he can't. His contract says he can't. I feel like contracts don't matter these days.
They don't. And it's definitely – a possibility. And, Jay Hill, when I talked to him earlier this year about his relationship with Kyle Whittingham, he got even held back emotion a little bit and pointed to how much of an impact Kyle Whittingham has had on, Jay Hill's life, not only as a football player in the past and a coach, but just a man, and acknowledge, Whittingham's family and the impact that they've had. So and you look at, the possibility of Jay Hill going to Michigan, he would become a media darling in the college football coaching carousel as the next big thing to hire in coaching. For whatever reason, BYU and Utah programs, it's funny when you look at all this coaching carousel and, BYU and Utah were not deemed as programs good enough to be in the playoff, yet these Big Ten programs can't get enough of these two coaching staffs and wanting to rate them. Potentially. But, I think that Jay Hill would be, if he has success at Michigan, which I would expect he would because he's just good wherever he is, he'd be in line to maybe get a SEC Big Ten coaching job, and, you think of this coaching carousel, there was thought of, maybe he could be a candidate for Colorado State. Well, and there was, talks even before he got to BYU when he was the Weber State coach that he was maybe in the mix for the Arizona job. It's a different tier of coaches that if you have success at Michigan. And I think, these athletic departments try to get, a splashy hire that's proof of avoiding risk and the profile, the resume that just inspires boosters and donors. And you're getting a Michigan DC that has success in the Big Ten and maybe knocks off an Ohio State. That just looks a little more glamorous to some than, say, the guy that's leading BYU. And even though, again, is that fair? No, because we know how good a football is played in this state. I think the country is realizing it by these coaching moves that are taking place and the interest that these two staffs get. But, I think definitely. And Jay Hill is someone that, I think the question's always been with Jay Hill is what are his motives? What does he want after his health scare with his heart attack last year? Does he want to ultimately get to a head coaching position? I think he's an ultimate competitor, and he's going to get to the highest ranks of the position. Kalani was asked today, in his press conference, if he expected to retain all of his coaches now with the new enhanced resources he's getting, and he kind of, danced around that question and said it can't be a fortune teller, but guys are going to become head coaches one day. He wants that to happen. And I think this could maybe give Jay Hill, if that's what it ends up being, maybe the best scenario to get a premier job rather than just simply these, Mountain West, Pac-12 jobs that he gets sometimes linked to. He could really go get something big potentially if this ends up playing that way.
Mitch, has the Crumble owner, in fact, gotten off the sideline again and ready to get to work to keep Jay Hill? Can you confirm that, Mitch?
No, I can't confirm specifically on the Crumble guy, but
okay. I'm just curious. I just want to know: have we seen anything on social that he's gotten out there and he's it's time for him to get off the sideline and get to work?
Well, BYU definitely got off the sideline and went to work for Kalani and this whole staff, and Jay Hill's got a great spot, and he does at BYU, and I think there'd have to be a real decision, but I think also, again, the respect that he has for Whittingham, Michigan, if that becomes the offer for him, it'd be hard to turn that down. And, but at the same time, I think BYU, I think fans would get fearful because then they think, it's just going to revert back to what it was pre-Jay Hill. And that, that was a mess at the end there in 2022. They were the worst defense, arguably, in college football 3 years ago before entering the Big 12. But you'd like to think that Kalani Sitake, armed with stability, and greater resources, can really go make a big splash. And Kalani's always been big on he wants a defensive coordinator that is completely aligned with what he wants from the defense. Before with Tuiaki, he had a limited budget to work with, and he was trying to develop and teach Tuiaki how he wants the defense to run. Even though Tuiaki worked with him at Utah, he was trying to teach him into being a defensive coordinator. Jay Hill, it was hit the ground running, give him full autonomy to go run that thing. Kalani's got guys on his defensive staff. I would look at General Guilford, if Jay Hill was to leave, as that guy. General Guilford's been on the staff every step of the way for a decade now since Kalani, took this job, and Jay Hill's promoted Gennaro. He retained Gennaro, one of the only carryovers from the previous staff with Jay Hill. And when it comes to alignment with what Kalani expects out of the defense, General Guilford checks a lot of boxes to me on that. But also at the same time, Kalani's got the resources now to go out and go get someone. This is no longer just, like a couple, year and a half ago when BYU lost Mark Pope, the fan base panicked and thought all was lost and it was doomsday scenario. They got better. And BYU, with its resources, what they've shown with basketball, what they've shown retaining Kalani Sitake, you would like to think that they can still be at a place where they're very successful. Will there be attrition if Jay Hill left? Absolutely, because there's a lot of guys on this roster that love playing for Jay Hill. But at the same time, like BYU's in a position to also replenish the roster. It's no longer the BYU of old where it's like you lose someone and all is lost and you can't recuperate. You've got the head coach in place, and he's made it clear he wants to be at BYU for the rest of his career. And so, if that happened, it's just interesting how you bring up, like the possibility of Whittingham being in Orlando and Kalani's down there, Jay Hill's down there. My goodness, these two kids BYU and Utah just can't break off from one another. But it's just part of the machine. BYU's been better at retention with retaining staff, probably better than most. Kalani's done a really good job of really having no coaching changes since they joined the Big 12. And if it does happen that way, I think that there's options internally to keep. But at the same time, like, no one would fault Jay Hill if he actually took an opportunity at Michigan and to work with Kyle Whittingham, a guy that he truly views as maybe like a mentor. Like, you're looking at someone that probably looks at Whittingham the way that Kalani looked at Lavelle. So it's a big deal, and no one could fault that. And to do it possibly at Michigan, that's a big-time opportunity, and a place that has won national titles just this handful of years ago. So, but BYU, you just like to think again that they're in a spot with their enhanced commitment from the guys like Crumble and the boosters that BYU has, and the athletic department that's really aggressive under Brian Santiago. They're just not going to be flat-footed and look like they're not going to be able to recoup and respond. Because Kalani Sitake, what we've learned over his 10 years, whenever there's adjustments made, BYU tends to get better. Now, would it be tough to replace Jay Hill? Absolutely. But BYU, under Kalani, has done a good job of always retooling the staff if needed to do that.
Mitch, from a player's perspective, you brought up the roster, and there would be attrition, of course. But who do you look at and go, oh, that guy, he would totally be out the door really quickly? I mean, I think that the big names people look at and they go, okay, it's not just that they'd go there. They could possibly go to Michigan and make an impact next year and put themselves on the map to go to the NFL. All these things become attractive. Who are some of those names that you'd look at and go, yeah, watch out for this person?
I'd look at someone like a Faletau Satuala. And I think when you look at this sort of dynamic, if Jay Hill was to go to Michigan, you look at guys that maybe are not BYU lifers, guys that maybe went to BYU for a position coach. Because remember, Jay Hill coaches the safeties at BYU along with being the defensive coordinator and the associate head coach. Satuala picked BYU over Utah. On the heels of a 5-7 season for BYU, he really bought into the vision of Jay Hill, and he's someone that would project next year to be one of BYU's faces of the program next season, especially on the defensive side. And he'd be someone that you'd look at and say, that could be a guy that would leave and follow Jay Hill. Other guys like Hunter Clegg, a defensive end who once signed with Utah, flipped to BYU after the mission. And, but he's someone that really is, grounded in his faith, coming back from a mission, loves the BYU experience. And that's what's interesting about BYU. And a lot of the talk about the culture of the last few years, how much does that get tested? Because if the culture really is in as great of a spot as what we've seen on the field results, you would like to think that they want to stay part of that culture. And with a reported enhanced NIL budget and rev share nearing the cap at $20.5 million, you're going to make nice money playing at BYU. So regardless of who the coach DC is, you will make a nice lump of money as a player on BYU's defense and BYU's roster, period. So, I think that's what's interesting is, like, I look across the board because you think also Jack Kelly, but he's already gone. His eligibility is expired. The cornerbacks with Trey Alexander and Evan Johnson, those are players that are Gennaro Guilford guys, and they really committed to Gennaro. And would they stay if Gennaro's the new DC? I would think so. Or whatever direction BYU goes. So, but Faletau Satuala would be the one that would probably be to make the most sense. That would seem like a Jay Hill guy going to follow him potentially if Jay Hill ends up going to Michigan, potentially with Kyle Whittingham.
Mitch, when you see kind of these things go down, and obviously one of the more interesting pieces of all this is also that Michigan is playing in Orlando in the Citrus Bowl next week. I would anticipate that there might be – I mean, how much does this just interrupt the next 24 hours for BYU, who at this time – tomorrow will be probably ending the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And I can't imagine it's not, at the very least, a massive distraction. But how do you think that gets handled?
I got to imagine it's something that is not ideal because guys like a Satuala, who are some of your key guys on the back end of the defense, are they now maybe thinking of their next stops after what it looks like 24 hours from now? It's not ideal. This whole bowl prep for BYU, it was easy to rip Notre Dame for their decision, but in many respects, it would not have been the worst thing. Now, I know Kalani Sitake would never entertain that idea. He loves the bowl practices, and there's value. I mean, there's some young guys at the cornerback position in particular that have really progressed in this bowl practice on the defensive side, and some younger talent that there's a kind of a feeling that they could be really key factors, maybe in 2026 and beyond for BYU. But it's just a big distraction. It's a game where, this Pop-Tarts Bowl between BYU and Georgia Tech, hard to really identify who's the more motivated team in this one. Last year, Alamo Ball, you just got the sense that BYU was just super motivated and ready to really silence Colorado and all the talk about the Buffs. And then there's been years past where it was, BYU clearly not motivated for an Independence Bowl and UAB rocks them. This one, hard to get a sense. Georgia Tech, both BYU and Tech, just kind of, I feel like Tech's a little more motivated, but still I think it's a little bit of a lackluster finish for them too. This is a game that's hard to kind of gauge as to what to reasonably expect. And then on top of it all, you don't have LJ Martin, who's going to have a decision after this game with deciding whether he wants to go to the NFL or come back to BYU for 2026. It's not ideal. And this calendar is not great for college football because any sort of changes that happen, it just naturally is going to lead to these players probably being distracted, having their agents hit them up and say, in this situation, if this coach leaves or this guy goes here, hey, this could be a landing spot for you. That was happening when there was rumblings about Kalani possibly going to Penn State. And, that distraction and the players' agents hitting them up about plan Bs if this happens. So it's just not ideal. It's not a typical work week. I mean, this entire week, you're seeing the players go to Disney World, Universal, all this stuff. Like, again, you're thinking, there's a football game? Like, my feet are dead after Disneyland. How the heck are you playing football after 48 hours after this? But so it's again, not ideal. And we'll see how BYU fares less than 24 hours from now.
Pretty wild. Mitch Harper, our BYU insider for KSLSports.com. Obviously, this is going to affect every program in the state if the dominoes fall as we think that they may, or as we certainly pictured that they could. Mitch, thanks for jumping on in short notice, and we'll keep an eye on everything going down here. And if anything breaks, obviously, you'll be able to keep us up to date. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You bet, guys. Take care.
There you go. Mitch Harper. What's interesting about this is that now I've got somebody being like, oh, you got to make it about BYU. I was like, oh, no. Listen, this entire football – look, I can't tell how many times in this past year, Lloyd, we've been talking about this and the possibility of the things that have gone down as sorry, I'm reading this on the screen as ESPN just did another breaking news hit here, and they're saying that Kyle Whittingham has agreed to a 5-year deal, according to Dan Wetzel and Pete Thamel. We're just waiting for something official to come down from Big Blue. But we'll see how this thing goes down. Anyway, we keep talking about how the state of sport in this state, football in particular, for the big programs, has never been better. And unfortunately, I think days like this, we talked about it, by the way, on where you're. I know where you're going.
Yeah, we just had a season unlike any other we've seen, where Utah and BYU had the seasons that they both had. BYU in a Big 12 title game, Utah right there and had a real shot at the Big 12 championship game as well. Like, this was a phenomenal season locally for the local teams, for your two big hitters in Utah.
Yeah, and look, Kyle Whittingham walking away from the program, that obviously that would be an immediate hit. But you knew that was coming at some point. Like, we knew that Kyle Whittingham was not going to be long for this job at Utah. And so we talked about how this thing could go. I don't think we ever saw this happening. And I honestly wonder how much of this is born from the idea of Kyle Whittingham maybe feeling like he wasn't just forced out, but that it just didn't go down like he would have wanted it to. That he wasn't the one making the decision. I think that's a huge part for him. He's just not one of these guys that wants to have somebody else, after 21 years at the helm at Utah, that somebody else goes, thanks. We'd love to see you go off in the distance. Like, no. Don't make me be that guy. I'll leave. I'm stepping down. But by the way, I'm not done coaching, and so I would appreciate it if you guys, whatever advisory role you had for $1 million a year that was worked into his contract, I don't want to be under that anymore. So let's make that right. Maybe put a buyout together of some sort so that I can be totally detached and a quote-unquote free agent. We heard that term. Into the transfer portal. He used that term. How many jokes did he make during that press conference? And we all went, ha, ha, ha. That's hilarious. Well, interesting. I wonder what that's going to look like. And then here it is, less than 2 weeks later, and it looks like it's coming to fruition. And Kyle Whittingham's likely going to take that Michigan job.
While some people in that scrum laughed and thought it was super funny, I think everybody, for the most part, their ears perked up and be like, "Okay."
It was the awkward laugh. It was the scared laugh. No.
It was like, okay, he's not done. He's ready to go. And the message that was put out in the press release, that Friday before at 2:00 in the afternoon is that he did not retire. It was he stepped down, and that whole thing, by the way, I keep thinking about that, and I'm like, yeah, that has sat really awkwardly with me. Like as I think about it, it's like, no, if people are like, well, he retired. Trust me, he was retiring. He did not retire. He does not want to retire.
Lloyd, I think
That's not a guy that wants to retire.
He wants to play golf in Hawaii with his grandkid. Like we had all sorts of versions of how we thought that Kyle Whittingham. Oh, I already know how this is going to go. He's going to retire. He's going to move to Hawaii. Oh, he's going to take all the grandkids on a cruise. Oh, he wants to be with his grandkids. He would never uproot his family like that. And at one point, I mean, PK talked about it last week quite a bit. It's just like if the Dillingham stuff would have gone down, Whit would have definitely considered that ASU job.
Yeah.
If you think that's wrong, then just look at what today brought you. That should be the indicator of how he would have looked at, and it didn't matter that it was in conference. It doesn't matter that it was, a guy that, these coaches look at, and it doesn't matter that these coaches have quote unquote loyalties, because at some point Kyle Whittingham probably felt, well, I have been loyal, and this didn't feel like a loyal situation of how I got put down the road here. And I'm not saying that there was a massive slight, but I think that Kyle Whittingham, if he wants to find a way to be slighted in the situation, he could easily make that happen. I think
it's what drives him. By the way, being slighted is what drives him.
Put something on the shoulder.
Him.
Yeah,
and by the way, there was another gem in that Tony Garcia interview, the Michigan beat writer. He mentioned about how his essentially Kyle Whittingham's people had reached out.
Right. That they
had reached out.
They said, "Hey, he's interested."
He's interested. Yes.
He said a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
He said a couple of weeks ago. That's exact. I didn't think about that. In the moment that he said it, I remember thinking, "Wow!"
Right away,
a couple of weeks ago, his camp reached out. You know what that is?
His camp.
You guys, you freaking get on the phone and call Michigan, because I'm not done doing this. I'm not done doing this. And now the breaking news keeps coming across the screen, and it keeps getting in bigger and bigger bolded red letters on ESPN that they have agreed to a 5-year deal, according to Pete Thamel and Wetzel. I think both of them at ESPN both were reporting that, right? So I think we're just waiting for something official to come from the University of Michigan. I almost think you don't even need it at this point. What's going to be interesting is where the dominoes fall after that and what that's going to look like as well. But a massive day here for the University of Michigan, who'd be hiring Kyle Whittingham with 177 career wins in 21 seasons, had 18 winning years, had seven double-digit win seasons, including this one, a year after going 5-7, and it just keeps getting more and more interesting.
As I just keep seeing, social media, the breaking. Former Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham has agreed to a 5-year deal to become Michigan's next head football coach.
Well, basketball would be interesting too.
Basketball would be.
That's it. So the terms of the deal, obviously, we'll find out at some point too.
It is so crazy to think.
To read that out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I told, we mentioned we have some, people to have their phone by them. Yeah, I think we're going to have to recycle through a couple of people. This is a done deal.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Okay. Let's take another quick break here before we get to the break. Josh Furlong is going to join us, one of our Ute insiders for KSL Sports. Josh, of course, has been all over this. He's covered Utah for a long time for KSL, so we'll chat with him also around the corner as we're waiting for something official to come down. He's probably just waiting to hit the send button officially for that official announcement as well. So we'll talk to Josh coming up around the corner. Stay here. Lloyd Cole, Alex Kirry, and Alex Napolis here taking you through live today from the KSL Sports Studios at Broadcast House as we bring you that news that Kyle Whittingham is likely. Done deal according to all the sources that are involved. Kyle Whittingham headed to Michigan as the head football coach the 22nd head football coach, by the way, at Michigan. So we'll take a break. We'll come back. More to go. 97.5 the KSL